Good morning. I hope you can hear me. Please text. I'm going to check the phone in just a minute after my first story, and then I'll repeat it if you can't hear it. Imagine, if you will, you are paralyzed and unable to speak. You may feel like you are a burden to all those around you. You may feel insignificant and totally worthless. Here's a story I came across about a lady in that situation and the impact she made on another human being without being able to say a word or lift a finger. Listen to the story of Joe and Susan. Joe took his paralyzed wife to the airport so he could fly her again to the Mayo Clinic, hoping to restore some brain functions so that she could possibly speak again, or at least blink her eyes when he asked her questions, yes or no. As Joe cared for her while they were waiting at the gate, a young woman was watching. Joe talked lovingly to Susan. He fed her, cleaned her, and stroked her hair gently. Susan threw up some of her food, and Joe quickly cleaned her face and blouse as best he could. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the lady who was watching turn her head away. Joe told her he was sorry that she had to see this and apologized if she was revolted or bothered by it. She turned her head back towards Joe and with tears in her eyes said, "No, I am not bothered by it at all. It's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And I was wondering if I will ever find someone to love me in the way that you love her." Now I'm going to check the phone and see if you can hear me. Well, it just says good morning, so I assume you can hear me, and I'm going to go on. Well, she said, I was wondering if I were to find someone to love me in the way that you loved her. I pray that Susan was able to hear what that young lady said and that she smiled on the inside. That she saw that even in her current situation, she could make an impact on another person. Joe was the one that showed unconditional love, but I suspect that Susan was a very loving person before her accident, and that inspired Joe's loving actions. Either way, Joe would not have had the opportunity to show this love if not for Susan's situation. I have a question for you and for me. Do you view difficulties and inconveniences as opportunities to show love? Well, if you're like me, you may have to work on that one. I can tell you one thing, though. Jesus coming to earth as a baby demonstrated that the King of the universe was willing to undergo mammoth inconveniences and difficulties because he loves you more than you can imagine. Last week was the second week of Advent, and the candle for that Sunday was the Bethlehem candle, and also the candle of love. Bethlehem was considered an insignificant little village. When the wise men came from the east to worship the birth of a king, and they ended up in Jerusalem, because that was where King Herod ruled from, Herod was unaware and had to ask them where the Christ is to be born. Now I'm going to read from Matthew 2, verses 1 to 6. And I did check. It seems like you guys are hearing me. That's awesome. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of all the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Apparently Herod didn't know his Bible very well. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for it is written by the prophet, this is Micah 5:2 they're quoting, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. The religious leaders knew that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem because they knew the scriptures. They reported that to Herod, as I just read. Now, I want to read from Micah chapter 1 through 5, where this prophecy came from. Now gather yourself in troops, O daughter of troops. He has laid siege against us. They will strike the judge of Israel with a rod on the cheek. And here's the verse. But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from old, from everlasting. They knew he was eternal, and from everlasting to everlasting. Verse 3, therefore he shall give them up until the time that she who is in labor has given birth. Foreshadowing Mary here. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return to the children of Israel. That talks about Israel coming back to Christ. And he shall stand and feed his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they shall abide, that means stay, or remain. For now he shall be great to the ends of the earth. And listen to this, verse 5. And this one shall be peace. Now, I may requote that next week because we're going to light the peace candle. This prophecy is set right in the middle of an impending war. Micah is sometimes called a prophet of doom. Yet in the middle of the impending destruction, there is a great promise. The Hebrew scholars were able to see a prophecy within a prophecy. They knew their stuff. Yet they were not looking for a Savior because they didn't feel like they needed one. You know anybody like that? Maybe you're like that. But we do see Bethlehem honored as being the place to usher in Jesus' first coming. What's the connection between a place, Bethlehem, and love? I'm going to deal with that in a minute. Today is actually the third Sunday in Advent, but since we did not meet last week, I'm going to combine the second and third Sunday of Advent subjects together, and I've already lit all the candles. Today, the Bethlehem, or candle of love, will show us how God's love made Bethlehem significant. Day of Advent today, we light the shepherd's candle, which is the pink one, and celebrate the joy expressed by the shepherds on that first Christmas day through the birth of our Savior. And here's the title of the message. God makes the insignificant significant in his love. You ever feel insignificant? Like Susan in my opening story? Or in another way? Well, through God, you are significant. God made Bethlehem significant. Jesus entered into our lives in the flesh at Bethlehem. Bethlehem, though small, was not insignificant in God's eyes. So everyone is significant in God's eyes. I'm going to probably repeat that several times today. I want you to get that. Like Jesus entered into the world physically at Bethlehem, we can show love by entering into someone else's lives. One of the most loving things you can do is to enter into someone's life right where they are, especially into seemingly insignificant places. I'm going to tell a story about a homeless man later who a lot of people would just walk by and see as insignificant. Many of us have done that, haven't we? You know, you can show up for a wedding or a birthday, but how about showing up in the normal day-to-day and being with people in all the circumstances? Now, I know today with quarantine and all the different things going on, you have to be careful, but you can call, phone, you can text, you can message on Facebook, many, many, many ways. Let people know you're praying for them, ask if they can pray. Jesus showed up in Bethlehem in a difficult circumstance and gave hope. We talked about hope 2 weeks ago, to a mother a father, a couple, to a nation, and to an entire world. And that's real love. Verse 2 says, Bethlehem is small among the clans of Judah. The angels didn't appear to the religious elite. They appeared to the shepherds. It's kind of funny that Herod didn't know what was going on. You know, the king, he's supposed to know everything. But he was the seemingly last to find out. Angels didn't appear to the religious elite. They appeared to the shepherds, who were vocationally the lowliest of people in Israel. They, like Bethlehem, though insignificant in the eyes of many, were significant in God's eyes. You know, redemption is the mission of Jesus Christ. And Bethlehem has been a city of redemption throughout its history. It's a city of promise. In the Old Testament, the book of Ruth opens with the words, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And so the story of the book of Ruth was that this family left Bethlehem because there was no bread, which is ironic because Bethlehem means house of bread. They went to Moab. The two men married women from Moab. The husband and the two sons died. Naomi was the mother, and one of her daughter-in-laws, Ruth, came back with her to Bethlehem when Naomi heard that there was now bread again. Ruth said, where you go, I will go. Your God will be my God. She went with her. And you know what? When she got back, she was gleaning in the field. That means picking up, what the people who harvest did not get. Matter of fact, in the law in the Old Testament, they were told that they're supposed to not harvest the corners of fields so that the poor could glean. It was kind of a way of taking care of the poor that God set up at that time. Well, anyways, she gleaned in the field of Boaz, who noticed how hardworking she was and told her men, okay, you protect her, you give her water, make sure nobody touches her, and leave a little extra. Well, it turns out that Boaz was a relative of hers, and Naomi figured that out, and it ended up, at that time, there was a thing called a kinsman redeemer. Redeemer, remember that word, because Jesus is also a redeemer. And so Boaz was a type of Christ when he ended up marrying Ruth, having a son, Obed, who had a son, Jesse, who had a son, David, who also lived in Bethlehem. When Samuel came to anoint a new king, he came to Bethlehem and anointed a shepherd boy. Well, Bethlehem is a city of redemption. It is significant in God's eyes. God not only made Bethlehem significant, like the Bethlehem candle last week was a second Sunday of Advent. Today we light the shepherd's candle. God made shepherds significant, the lowliest. To be a shepherd was not considered one of the higher occupations in Judea. This might be surprising since, Abraham, Isaac, David, Moses, all came from being a shepherd. And even in the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is called a shepherd. But for some reason, they put down shepherds. Now, it is common for people who are of authority and maybe in a city to put down people who are rural. And that's a terrible thing. I pastored for 12 and a half years in a farming community in Wabash, Indiana, and I can tell you, farmers are awesome people. You ever say a negative thing about a farmer, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. I'm going to tell you you need to be thankful. They feed you. Without farmers, you'd be dead. Anyways, back to the story. Whatever reputation they may have had among men, it was to humble shepherds watching their flocks by night, that the angel of the Lord appeared. There is nobody so low that the Lord cannot reach down to that situation and raise them up. There is nobody so far from God that he cannot draw themselves to him with cords of everlasting love. The smallest appearance of the angel at first struck fear in the hearts of these countrymen. The original Greek text of Luke 2:9 tells us that they feared fear greatly. The dynamic of this expression is captured in the King James. That got me right here in the heart. I thought, man, I read his word and pray and then just try to get it over with and go on to the things I'm going to go on to often. Well, since that day, I've taken more time and I've basked in his love and found joy when I do. May you do that also. Also, I pray that you spread that love. Think about the story I told earlier, how Joe spread his love for his wife and how that overflowed onto the lady at the airport. Pretending Teddy had given her something very special. At the end of the day, Teddy worked up enough courage to softly say, "Miss Thompson, you smell like my mother. And her bracelet looks real pretty on you. I'm glad you like my presents." After Teddy left, Miss Thompson got down on her knees and prayed for God's forgiveness. She prayed for God to use her as she sought not only to teach these children, if she were alive. You are the only family I have now. My dad died last year. Love, Teddy Stallard. Miss Thompson went to the wedding and sat where Teddy's mother would have sat because she let God use her as an instrument of encouragement. That was from a talk of Tony Campolo. He probably told it a lot better than I did, but I got to tell you, that's demonstrating love, and I wish I did it more, but it does happen. We need to demonstrate that love often. I heard an account of a Christian who wanted to demonstrate the love of Christ to someone who could not repay him. He saw a homeless man sleeping on a park bench in the cold. He went to a high-end outdoor store and bought him the best sleeping bag and back. Weren't such high end. And so he went to the guy and he says, "What are you going to do with these?" He goes, "Oh, hi, I've got friends that need these. And I didn't think I needed the best." And so he helped them go and distribute them to other friends. That love that he showed overflowed. That man ended up going back